Y'all can be seated. I'm excited to be here. What's up, everybody? Come on. I'm excited and honored to be teaching in our series, My Problems, God's Answers. We're in week 8 of this series, and I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm really thankful that I don't just have problems, but God has answers for them. Because I couldn't imagine my life just full of problems with no answers. So come on, who else is thankful that God has answers to our problems? Well, tonight, I believe I'm going to be talking on a topic that everyone can relate to and everyone faces at some point in their life. And so tonight, I'm going to be talking about the problem of offense. The problem of offense. And in youth ministry, we say note takers are history makers. So if you're taking notes tonight, the title of my message is Defense to Offense. Defense to offense. I grew up playing sports, so a lot of what I preach about has to do with sports. So I'm thinking, like, how can I defend against offense? And so I don't know about the rest of you, but have any of you been offended by someone or something that was done to you? Because I know I have been offended a lot in my life. It looks like it's me and Pastor Dan. We're the only two people offended in here. Come on, can I tell you that if you haven't yet been offended, get ready, because it's going to happen, because we live in a broken world full of broken people that hurt people. And so the chance to be offended is going to pop up in your life. And I can tell you that we can't control what's done to us. You can't control what your neighbor does to you or the person that cuts you off on the road. But what we can control is how we respond to what is done to us. And so we get to choose whether we get to be offended or not offended, if we want to live a life unoffendable. And so I was looking up offense, and the definition of offense is an annoyance or resentment brought about by a perceived insult to or disregard of oneself or one's standards or principles. A perceived insult. And so when we look at offense, and when I've been through offense in my life, I can tell you that most of the time, it's not these big things that offend people. It's little small things that stack on top of each other, and then all of a sudden you have a big offense, and you're angry and you're upset. And so it's not these big issues that we're generally dealing with. And what I love about that definition of offense is it said a perceived insult, which means you perceived it as an insult. But how many of you know so often if we just went to that person and found out why exactly they did what they did, we can maybe hear their heart of, it wasn't actually to insult you, but it just came across wrong. Maybe you caught them on a bad day where their baby hadn't slept all night, and they just were a little bit tired. Or you caught them after a lock-in, and so they're saying, hey, I got no sleep in 8 basketball games, and I'm not built like I was when I was in high school. But so often what we see is it's a perceived insult on ourselves. And we see the root cause of offense is hurt, rejection, insecurity, and pride in our own lives. It stems from us. In James 1:19-21, it says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. So get rid of all the filth and evil in your lives and humbly accept the word God has planted in your hearts, for it has the power to save your souls. Come on, when we look at offense, it generally is stemmed from anger. And so that's what the Bible is telling us here. Be slow to anger. Be slow to speak. If someone catches you off guard, if someone catches you to where you feel like, hey, I feel like offense is kind of boiling up in me, I feel a little bit offended, be slow to speak. Be slow to anger. Can I tell you that nothing productive gets done? Nothing productive gets done when you're quick to get angry. I don't know about the rest of you, but anytime I've ever been quick to get angry, nothing productive comes out of that conversation. I don't walk out of it and think, well, we got a lot done that day. We're not getting much done if you're going to be quick to get angry and immediately angry at people. And so we got to be slow to get angry, and we got to be slow to speak. Matthew 12:25 says, Jesus knew their thoughts, and he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself will be in ruin, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. Can I tell you that offense will divide you and distract you from the plan and purposes that God has for your life? It says it right there in the Bible. Every kingdom divided against itself will be in ruin. And offense creates division. And can I tell you that offense is not just something that affects your life, but it affects everyone around you. When you live an offended life, you're allowing everyone around you, your friends, your family, your church, you're allowing everyone around you to be affected by those decisions. And can I tell you that the devil is the master of division? What he wants to do is to create division in everything he can, and offense is one of the ways he can do it easily. And so I'm just saying there may be some of you in here tonight that you're allowing a wall of offense stop you from what God has in store for your life. You're wondering why you've hit that wall, and God's just saying, let's take that wall down tonight. And when we choose to be offended, we're choosing to be divided. And we're letting the enemy win. When we choose to live an offended life, we're saying to the enemy, you've won. And we live in a world, can I tell you, we live in a world, in a culture that believes that everyone's a victim. Oh, if someone's done something wrong to you, you get to be a victim. We have this victim mentality in our culture nowadays of this is how you get to be, and you get to be offended. You should be offended. They hurt you. But can I tell you, that's not what God says. God doesn't say to live offended. And so we have to learn about addressing the offense in a healthy manner, in a biblical manner, in a godly manner. And here in a little bit, I'm going to give you 2 simple points of how we can address an offense. But can I tell you that oftentimes we choose to be offended because we feel like we're making ourselves feel better. We feel like we're protecting ourselves. Like, oh, I'm mad at them and I'm going to push them out and I'm protecting myself. But can I tell you that you're just going to cause more issues and bigger problems down the road? You're just kicking the can down the road and there's going to be something bigger that stems from it. The problem's just going to continue to grow. And so we have to address it head on. Can I tell you there was a time in my life where I lived offended for a long portion of my life. It was a hard time in my life. And I was going through a situation where I had someone who was close to me that was pretty verbally abusive to me. And I knew it was going on, and I knew the things they were saying, and they weren't true. And so I chose to do it the unhealthy way. I chose to do it the worldly way and play the victim role. And I chose to live offended. And I ignored the issues. I didn't address the issues. I knew they were going on, but I said I didn't see this person that much, so I didn't need to deal with the offense. And then all of a sudden, COVID kicked around, and everybody was isolated. In my family, I grew up with football Sundays. Most of y'all probably know I'm a massive Chiefs fan. And so I grew up on Sundays watching the Chiefs. And so every Sunday, we turn football on, we watch it, we get our chili out. But when COVID hit and everybody was isolated, it was just our small family. But it was like, hey, we're going to invite a bunch of people over. Since we're all isolated, let's just get everybody over. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. And they started telling me who was coming over. And this person's name hit the list, and I thought, that's a problem. That's a problem because I don't like that person. I'm not a fan of that person, and I'm not ready to face the problem yet. And so I was living in an offended life. And I remember telling my parents, if they come, I won't be there. So you have to choose between me and them. Instead of addressing the problem in my own life, I made my family decide. Instead of doing it how I should have done it, I put it on my parents. And I said, you've got to choose. And it wasn't easy for my parents. It literally created division in our family because I wasn't willing to address the offense. And I can remember telling my mom, this person owes me forgiveness. This person owes me an apology. And I just want to tell you all tonight, nobody owes you anything. Don't wait on an apology to get rid of the offense because it's most of the time not going to come. Can I tell you, I never got the apology I thought I was owed. But in that time, I told my mom, I said, you need to deal with the problem. You need to deal with that person because I'm not going to deal with it. And in that meantime of that, I started studying offense. I started studying forgiveness. I started studying some of these topics in the Bible. And I came to the conclusion that if I was forgiven, don't I have to forgive them? I can't live an offended life. And I remember texting my mom one day and saying, hey, I don't want you to deal with that problem. I'm going to deal with it. And so, but it took me a while, and it wasn't an easy to get to. I didn't want to get to that point. I wanted to live offended because it was easier to live offended than it was to actually address the problem. And can I tell you, it's not going to be easy for you in your lives. It's not going to be easy to address an offense. But I want to give you 2 simple points, and anybody can do them. There's nothing difficult. There's nothing hard. Sometimes the Bible can be difficult, but this is easy, and we can all do it. And so my first point is have grace and be quick to forgive. Can y'all say that with me? Have grace and be quick to forgive. Colossians 3:13 says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. I want to remind you that verse doesn't say forgive those who you want to forgive, but it says forgive all those who offend you. Every single person that offends you, no matter who it is in your life, it says to forgive them. And can I tell you that part of living an unoffendable life is being willing to be quick to forgive? Being willing to forgive those even though you know, man, I don't want to forgive them. And can I tell you that forgiveness is not going to be a one-time deal? When I got to the point that I was ready to forgive that person in my life, it wasn't like, oh, I forgive you, and all those feelings inside of me went away. But it was something I had to wake up and do every single day in my life. Like, God, I forgive that person for what they've done to me. And it's going to be the same way for you. Sometimes it might be quicker than others, but there's going to be times where you're going to have to forgive someone every single day for years and years and years because those feelings aren't just going to go away overnight. And so what does it mean to forgive on a worldly definition means to stop feeling anger or resentment towards an offense. But what forgiveness means for us means to forgive like God has forgiven us. There's an extra layer. There's a deeper layer to forgiveness as a Christian than just forgiving someone for what they did. Oh, I forgive you. There's a deeper level of forgiveness as a Christian, and it's to forgive as God has forgiven us. In Luke 6:27 through 28, it says, but to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who hurt you. Come on, I love this verse. Doesn't just say forgive those who hurt you and walk away, but it says bless those who have hurt you. Come on, God didn't just forgive us and send us on our way, but God has forgiven us and blessed us. And so as Christians, when we want to forgive someone, it goes to farther and a deeper standard of, am I willing to forgive them? And then am I willing to pour blessings on them? Am I willing to pray for them? Come on, you want to know if you're ready to forgive somebody? Start praying for them. When you start praying blessings on their life, you know you have forgiven that person. We're called to a higher standard of forgiving than the world. I love this verse. It's Luke 6:35 in the Amplified Version. It says, but love that is unselfishly seek the best or higher good for your enemies and do good and lend expecting nothing in return. For your reward will be great, rich and abundant, and you will be the sons of the Most High, because he himself is kind and gracious and good to the ungrateful and the wicked. I love in this verse that it explains the context of love. It explains the context of how you're supposed to love your enemies. It's to unselfishly seek the best or higher good for them. Are you willing for someone who's offended you to seek the best or higher good unselfishly for that person? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. I remember when I was back in college, I had a best friend that I grew up with. I grew up, our parents worked at the same place. We went to school together. We played sports together. We grew up doing everything together, traveling, sports, everything. We spent our summers together. And in college, we were still hanging out. We were still buddies. And I remember one night he crashed my car. And I said, hey, man, we'll figure it out. And this wasn't like a fender bender in a parking lot, but like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage to the point I had to call Joe McCain to come tow it and take it to a shop because I couldn't drive it. And I said, it's all right, man, we'll figure it out. I know you're good for it. And I remember taking it to the shop, and they told me, they said, hey, it's going to be $5,000. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was broke in college. I didn't have no money. I didn't have $5,000. And so I called my buddy up, and I said, hey, man, this is what they said it's going to be. It's going to be $5,000. I remember on the phone he told me, my name's not on the title. It's not my responsibility. And I said, okay. All right. Well, I guess it's my responsibility because my name's on the title. And so I got it fixed. And can I tell you, it took me years to forgive him. And I remember I thought I had forgiven him. And then I remember one time I was wrestling with God, and God was like, have you really forgiven him? And I was like, yes, God, I forgave him. He's like, but really, have you forgiven him? I was like, yes. And God's like, would you bless his family? I said, ooh. I don't know. I feel like he still owes me $5,000. feel like he needs to bless me. And I remember God telling me, he said, if you're not willing to bless him, you haven't forgiven him. And can I tell you, it took me even longer to realize that I'm willing to bless him. And I pray for his family, and I pray for him, and every opportunity I get, I invite him to church because I'd be willing to bless his family because I don't hold it against him anymore. And my second point, this is a super easy point here. Address the offense. I know it's complicated. Be quick to forgive, address the offense. 2 simple, easy points. In Matthew 18:15, it says, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. If the other person listens and confesses it, you have won that person back. Now, I know so often I hear people say, well, I don't even know where to start reading the Bible. It's complicated. It's really tough to read the Bible. I don't know where to start, but when we look here in this verse, it's pretty clear how God tells us to address offense. He gives us 2 ways to address it. He says, 1, go privately. This means you're not going to Facebook or whatever other social media you have to air someone out and put their dirty laundry out there of how they did you. I feel like so often today we get offended by somebody and then all of a sudden there's like a 7-page paragraph on Facebook about what this person's done to you. And God doesn't say go to social media to address an offense. But God says go privately and talk to them. Don't go to public. Don't go to your sister, your neighbor, whoever it is, but go privately to that person. And he also says go to that person. He's not saying go to your life group and gossip about it. He's not saying go to your mother, your father, your siblings, your cousins, your aunts. You know, nothing makes me more mad than when someone might be offended by something I've done or said, and then I hear about it from other people. I'm like, God didn't call you to go to that person over there and talk to them about it and for me to hear about it from them. We have to go to that person. We have to go privately and to that person. And that's how we're called to address offense. We're not here to shame people. Because like I said in the beginning, it's a perceived insult. It's what we think they meant by it. And most of the time, it's not what they meant. And I feel like so often we can fall into this place where we're offended by someone and we just ignore the issue like I did. We get into this place where it's like, I'm not going to address that issue. I'm going to ignore it because it'll just be a big deal. And, you know, it's easier to be offended. But can I tell you, it will pop up bigger issues down the road. I was thinking about when I was preparing this message, my engine light turned on. And it turns on when I need oil. And it tells me there's 5% oil left. And it's generally not convenient when I need to get my oil done. And so I could ignore getting the oil change done, but how many of you know at some point the engine's going to blow up because it needs the oil? And I feel like so often God's telling us, hey, you're ignoring the minor issue and a major issue's coming. You're ignoring that little engine light, that little bit of unforgiveness, that little bit of not addressing it. And it's minor right now, but if you wait till down the road, I can see what's ahead. It's going to be a big issue for you. And so we have to address the issue. Come on, we're called to address the offense, but there's a way about going about addressing offense. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to be angry. In Proverbs 15:1, it says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Come on, we don't want to address offense with anger. Can I tell you that 10 out of 10 times, if you go to someone to address an offense and you are angry, you are not going to get anything accomplished in that conversation. That offense is not going to get addressed. Because what's going to happen is that person's going to get defensive and then they're going to get angry. And so we have to watch how we address the offense. We can't just do it in anger. We can't just fly off the handle. But we have to be gentle in our spirit when we go to somebody and address an offense. We need to lead these conversations with a gentle heart and lead with grace. Being willing to forgive them. Have grace for that person and for what they've done. And that's how we have to go about it. I like to think about it this way. I try to understand why that person did what they did to me. And can I tell you, if you're angry, it's not time to address the offense. So if you're still angry and you're still worked up about the situation, don't go and address it. You're not gonna get unangry by the time you address the offense. But when you get into the situation and you're not angry anymore, that's the time to address it. And in my own personal life, when I feel like offense is boiling up and someone did something and I'm like, I don't really like it, can I tell you what I do? I give it to God. I say, God, this is yours. And I wait on it for a week. I pray about it for a week. I allow God to figure out, is that offense really matter? And in that week, I try to understand why they did what they did to me. What was their heart behind it? Did I catch them on a bad day? What was it about it that set them off? And can I tell you that most of the time, by the end of the week, I don't need to address the offense, because by the time I get to the end of the week, I'm like, is it really going to impact my life? No, it's not. And I've allowed God to work through me. In Proverbs 19:11, it says, sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. I love this verse here because it talks about how a sensible person can earn respect by overlooking wrongs. How many of we know not every offense needs to be addressed? We don't need to address every little thing that happens to us in our lives. God's called us to address certain offenses, but there's other offenses where he says, hey, you don't need to address that with that person. And it goes back to giving it to God and allowing God to minister to you and say, hey, do I need to address this? And there's going to be times where at the end of that week where I'm like, yes, I need to talk to that person, because I still feel a certain type of way about it, and I don't want to feel a certain type of way about it. And so there's going to be times that you need to address it, but then also know there's times where you don't need to address the offense. Come on, the bottom line is to defend against offense. We need to be quick to forgive and have grace and address the offense when necessary. And can I tell you that in order to forgive others as God has forgiven us, you have to first receive that forgiveness that God has given you. He gave us that forgiveness when Jesus went to the cross and died on the cross for us so that we could have a relationship with him and our sins could be forgiven. Because there was a price to be paid for the sin, and it was death. And Jesus paid that ultimate price. And so maybe you're in here tonight and you're living an offended life. You have some offense that you need to address in your life, but first tonight, you need to accept the forgiveness that God has given you first. Or maybe you once had accepted it and you've walked away and you're saying, I don't want to walk out today without accepting that forgiveness and walking in that forgiveness. I don't want to live an offended life another day. And so with everyone's heads bowed and eyes closed, if that's you in here, you're saying, I don't want to live offended anymore, but I want to walk in the forgiveness that God's given me. And I want to forgive others as God has forgiven me. And you need to accept that forgiveness in your life for the first time. I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. And so if that's you in here tonight, I want you just to shoot your hand up real quick. You're saying, hey, I want to accept Jesus in my life and accept the forgiveness that God has given us. You can just shoot your hand up in there real quick. It's between you and God. We're not here to embarrass you tonight. I see those hands. See those hands. Well, here at Grace Life Chapel, we're a family, and so we're going to all pray this prayer together. With all of you who raised your hands, we're all going to pray this. You can just repeat after me and say, God, thank you for the amazing plan you have for my life. Thank you tonight for loving me, and thank you, Jesus, for leaving heaven, coming to earth, and dying on the cross for me. Today, Jesus, I ask you, come into my heart, be my Lord, be my Savior, and help me to follow you the rest of the days of my life. In Jesus' name, amen. Come on, can we give it up for all those who made that decision? Come on, Pastor Dan.
Amen.